All right, so we're just going to dive right into this. My predictions for week one, what the depth chart is going to look like for Utah football. We're at the tail end of fall camp. We've gotten a lot of updates from coaches and from players. I shouldn't say coaches, mostly from Whittingham. We had the opportunity to talk to the assistant coaches week one. We'll get that opportunity again, I believe, this week. I need to double check on that, but we should be able, we should be hearing from them again soon. So we'll get a little bit more detail, hopefully, from assistant coaches. But regardless, we've gotten a lot of updates over the last couple of weeks about how fall camp has gone. There's certainly been a lot to sift through, a lot of positivity, as you would expect from Utah and from the way that they approach camp and media access. Certainly makes a lot of sense. So plenty to parse through, but I think I've got a good feel for what the depth chart is going to look like. At least I maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I'm probably crazy, but I feel like these are educated guesses. We'll call it that in terms of what we've heard and kind of figuring out where guys fit. And some guys, I'm just taking a guess. Some positions, I'm just taking a guess. So wanted to dive into my predictions for the depth chart. So I'm going to run through just the offense and defense. I didn't include the specialists. This is just the offense and defense, looking at, the starting positions, what the ones, what the twos, and some positions, I listed the threes, what I think they're going to be when it comes week one for Utah football. Man, we're a week away from it, so we'll have a week to dissect this and make some other predictions, maybe based on what we hear this week. But certainly looking forward to the official release of the depth chart, as we always do. We always love the depth chart release, so excited for that. But let's get to it. Quarterback Devin Dampier, QB1, unquestionably the guy for Utah. As long as Utah keeps him healthy this season, Utah is going to be in contention, in my opinion. I think they're going to have, a pretty competitive year if as long as they keep Devin upright and healthy. So that's going to be key. Behind him, the backup quarterback spot has been one of the more talked about battles in camp. And to start, it sounded like Isaac was off to a really good start in camp. Coach Whittingham mentioned when we spoke with him that second week that Wilson was having, a really productive camp, that he looked improved. But last week, and I think even the week before, he mentioned that the competition is still ongoing, which is maybe a little concerning. You would hope that Isaac would have had that spot sewn up as we've gotten to this point of camp, right? The conclusion of it. But I'm still going to edge on the side of experience and put Wilson as the backup with Bird coming in as QB3. Transitioning to running back, we know what this group is going to look like at the top. It's going to be Wayshawn Parker and Nakari Rogers as a 1-2 combo. Whittingham shared that they're pretty interchangeable, that, it's not certain, it's not for certain that Wayshawn is going to be top dog. I would be surprised if he's not. So I have Wayshawn RB1, Nakari RB2. This third spot is going to be interesting because, they have four other running backs in competition for that spot, with Devin Green, Bryce Duke, Daniel Bray, and Racing Guillory. I'm going to list Bray as the RB3. And my reasoning here is he serves as the biggest complement to Parker and Rogers in terms of the change of pace that he provides. He has a little bit more athleticism, speed, juice, whatever you want to call it. He offers a little bit more in the passing game where you can do a little bit, some different things with him. So I'm going to put Bray as RB3, but again, it could be any of the other three in the mix for that spot. But Bray having the time in the program, in the offense, he got here during the winter workouts, so he's been here. He had spring ball and all that. I'm going to list him as RB3. At tight end, this is a spot that I'm really interested in seeing how Utah actually lists it. You know, under Andy Ludwig, Utah had a Y tight end and they had a U tight end. They had two designated tight end spots. I don't think we'll see that. I think we're just going to have one tight end position on the depth chart. Maybe we see two, but I think it's going to be Dallin Bentley listed as the top dog at tight end with Hunter Andrews behind him. Now, maybe Hunter Andrews is listed as a fullback. Maybe he's listed as the third running back. He's a Swiss Army knife. They could list him in a number of different positions, but I'm going to list him as tight end 2. And then behind him, I went 3 deep here as well with J.J. Buchanan or Otto Tia. That's the first or on the depth chart is J.J. Buchanan, Otto Tia at tight end. At wide receiver, again, we know that Whittingham shared that they feel good about a top 7, and I shared what I felt that top 7 looked like last week with guys included here. But this is a group where I feel like there's going to be a surprise. So I have it listed. I have it laid out here. This is how I view sort of the depth chart. But I would not be surprised to see a surprise on the depth chart at wide receiver for Utah. In fact, I almost expect it just because there always seems to be a surprise with maybe who is listed where, that sort of thing. So we'll see. But here's how I see it. At X receiver, I have Tobias Merriweather listed as the top guy there, with Dadrian Zipperer actually listed behind him as the backup. At the Y position, I have Larry Simmons and Justin Stevenson listed there as the 1-2. And then at the Z spot, which is your slot receiver essentially, I have Creed Whittemore and Ryan Davis listed there as well. So that's how I see it. But again, almost fully expect to see a surprise here because that's just the way it goes at wide receiver sometimes. Offensive line, first 5, chalk across the board: Lomu, Togiai, Kump, Mokofisi, and Fano. The second unit is going to be really interesting to see how they listed, because I feel they have a really good group of linemen behind the starters, but there's some uncertainty in where exactly they're going to be listed. So I have Zeroe Williams listed as the primary backup behind Lomu at left tackle. I have Soloto Moyai listed as the backup at left guard. I have Ike Garcia listed at center. Now, Garcia got a lot of work last year at along the left side, at left tackle and left guard, but I know that he's also gotten work at center. So I'm going to list him here just because it makes all the other pieces fit together quite nicely, but he could be listed anywhere across the offensive line. And then also Keith Olson at right guard, Kalolo Taaga, who was, again, the transfer from USC during the winter portal. That's how I see the second unit shaping up. So that's what I've got there. So, yeah, that's how I see the offensive side of the ball. If you have thoughts, opinions, suggestions, questions, whatever, who do you think fits where, that sort of stuff, please feel free to hit me up. Send me your predictions on the offensive side of the ball. Let's get to the defensive side. On the defensive side, this is going to be interesting. So at defensive end, we know Logan Fano is going to man one defensive end spot. Who the starter is going to be opposite of him, that has been one of the bigger talking points of fall camp. I think it's going to boil down to one of 3 guys: Cash Dillon, Lance Holtzclaw, or John Henry Daly. For whatever reason, I think Paul Fitzgerald is just a lock to be listed as the backup to Logan Fano, but he for certain has been in the mix. But I just think he's going to be listed as the backup to Fitzgerald, to Fano, for whatever reason. That's not something that I've been told. That's just how my brain views Fitzgerald for whatever reason. So I'm going to say Cash Dillon emerges as top dog at this defensive end spot. Now, maybe it's not out of fall camp. Maybe it's into the season in reality. But for my prediction, I'm going to list him as the starter opposite of Fano, with Lance Holtzclaw and John Henry Daly listed as the backup with an or between them. Based on everything that we've heard during fall camp, this has been a really heated competition, and that was the expectation coming into camp for this spot, based on what Lewis Powell shared with us in week 1. So that's how I see it. Inside, defensive tackle, Dallas Vakalahi, DT1, Aliki Vimahi, the other starter. And then I have Jonah Leea backing up Vimahi, and I have the true freshman Carson Kafusi listed as a backup to Vakalahi. Now, with this, maybe there's another surprise here. This is a group where, maybe we see Leea listed as a starter. Maybe we see Vimahi listed as a backup. Maybe we see another freshman, whether it be Semi Taulunga, Pupu Sepulona, Dylan Battle, maybe listed here as well. But that's how I see the defensive tackle position. At linebacker, we've got the Mac and Rover positions. I've got Lander Barton and Lavani Damuni as the 1-2 at Mac, with Jonathan Hall and Trey Reynolds as the 1-2 at Rover. And then the defensive secondary. One name that we've heard a lot about, fall camp, spring ball, Jackson Benny. I don't have him listed here because I don't know exactly where to place him. So just be mindful of Benny here. He could play anywhere, really, for Utah. So with that in mind, I've got Nickelback as Smith Snowden and Jalen Moson. Cornerback, Scooby Davis, Jeremiah Caldwell. I think Caldwell has had, based on what we've heard, I think Caldwell has had a good camp where he's shown progress from where he ended in spring ball. And I think him being the backup to Davis is a recognition of his improvement. Now, that other cornerback spot, you've got Blake Cotton emerging in that race with Donovan Saunders. Those are going to be, I think those are going to be the top two cornerbacks, at that spot. I think Donovan Saunders very well could also serve as backup to Scooby Davis, with Caldwell serving behind him in terms of the overall hierarchy here. But that's how I see it. And then at safety, Rabbit Evans, Nate Ritchie, the 1-2 at strong safety, and maybe a surprise here at free safety. I've got Teo Johnson, obviously, as the starter, with Nathan Tillman, the true freshman, listed behind him. So that's somebody that we've heard a lot of good things about. Teo Johnson raved about him and said that, he's the next safety in terms of who you think is going to be the guy coming out of that safety room in the next couple of years. He pointed to Tillman as being that guy that can do it all. And I think Teo has taken him under his wing, kind of shown him the ropes. And, there's been a lot of positive buzz, even going back to spring ball, of what Tillman was doing on the defense side of the ball and how it complements everybody else. So I think Teo, Tillman, I think that's your 1-2 at free safety. At strong safety, a lot of expectations for Evans. And I think it's a nice luxury to have somebody like Nate Ritchie. He's not talked about like he was when he, returned from his mission and had sort of the expectations that he did returning home. But I still think he's a very valuable commodity for Utah in that safety room. To have somebody that's been with the program as long as as Utah has, for him to have the experience that he does, that is huge for Utah in this safety room. So don't take Nate Ritchie for granted. He's still a valuable piece to the secondary, even though we don't talk about him as much as some of the other safeties. He is still valuable to that room. So overall, that's how I see it. That's how I see the depth chart. That's what I predict anyways. Again, I would love to hear from everybody. Who do you think starts at certain open competition battles? Who do you think emerges as, a key backup? How do you see the second units shaking out? I want to hear from you guys, so please send me your suggestions, your thoughts, your questions on what we might see with the depth chart next week. With all of that said, let's get to my conversation with Andrew Crowley from last week about Utah's non-conference schedule and just some other thoughts on Utah basketball as well.